Asep Saifuddin lived with his wife, Juharia, and their 3 children in Bekasi. Their life initially went smoothly as Asep was busy with his accessory business, selling bags, belts, bracelets, necklaces, and other items. His business grew to the point where he employed several workers. Meanwhile, Juharia was a housewife but occasionally helped her husband. Their children were still in school, except for their eldest, Sylvia, who was studying law at a local university. This family was known for being harmonious and financially stable in their neighborhood. But behind the scenes, tensions often arose between Asep and Juharia over money matters. At one point, Juharia cut the salaries of Asep's employees without his knowledge. The workers were supposed to receive 4 million rupias, but Juharia only gave them 1.5 million rupias, lending the remainder without Asep's permission, which deeply disappointed him. They argued, and Juharia confessed she felt she wasn't given enough money for daily needs. The situation became more strained because Juharia often borrowed money to buy unnecessary items, and Asep refused to pay off the debts. Arguments kept happening. Meanwhile, Sylvia harbored resentment towards her father because Asep disapproved of her relationship with Hagisko, her boyfriend of 4 years. Hagisko was an IT student from a well-off family but had issues with online loans. Asep rejected their relationship upon learning about these financial problems, which angered Sylvia and brought her closer to her mother. Juharia, also upset with Asep, supported Sylvia. The situation reached a climax when Sylvia, consumed by anger, falsely accused her father of having an affair. Juharia, unaware it was a lie, became even angrier, and eventually, they started planning something harmful. Juharia and Sylvia plotted to poison Asep with detergent. On June 24, 2024, their plan was nearly executed when Sylvia suddenly had second thoughts and called it off. However, under Hagisko's influence, Sylvia was persuaded to resume the plan the next day. On June 25th, they tried again, this time involving Hagisko in their scheme. Without a hint of suspicion, Asep immediately drank his fruit juice. However, after just a few sips, he vomited and complained that it tasted like soap. The 3 of them pretended to panic and quickly helped Asep as he was throwing up. They offered him water, explaining that the glass might not have been clean when it was rinsed, which made it taste soapy. Because of this explanation, Asep didn't suspect anything. After their plan failed again and Asep was safe, they began to rethink their strategy. Hagisko then suggested that they should finish Asep directly by waiting until he fell deeply asleep. Upon hearing this suggestion, Sylvia and her mother agreed, and they began to devise a new plan. On Thursday, Hagisko came back to Sylvia's house. That night, their plan was to act, while Asep was fast asleep. Earlier that afternoon, Asep had played tennis at a nearby court. That evening, without suspicion, Asep invited his family, including Sylvia and her 2 younger siblings, as well as Hagisko, out for dinner at a restaurant. After eating, they went shopping at Metropolitan Mall in Bekasi. Around 10 p.m., they returned home. Once home, Sylvia and her mother quickly put her younger siblings to bed so they wouldn't witness the impending plan. Asep, exhausted from the day's activities, prepared to sleep. The 3 of them waited until Asep was sound asleep. However, Asep still wasn't in a deep sleep, so Juharia asked them to postpone the plan. Finally, around 3 a.m., after Asep had fallen into a deep slumber, Juharia woke Sylvia and Hagisko to execute their plan. They wore helmets to conceal their faces during the act. They then crept into Asep's room. Hagisko approached Asep and attempted to control him by pressing down on him. Asep woke up startled and struggled, nearly throwing Hagisko off. Sylvia and her mother quickly helped hold Asep's arms and legs. However, Asep kept fighting back and managed to break free. In a panic, Hagisco struck Asep on the head with his helmet. Asep fell, and Hagisco continued to hit him several times until Asep no longer moved. After ensuring that Asep was no longer breathing, Sylvia and her mother cried as they looked at Asep's lifeless body. After that, they took Asep's phone and used his data to apply for an online loan. In the morning, the loan money was deposited into Asep's account, and Sylvia quickly transferred all the funds to her own account. She then gradually transferred the money to her mother's account. After that, they began to pretend that everything was fine. The next morning, Sylvia and her mother went about their usual activities, even taking Sylvia's younger siblings to school without raising any suspicions about what had happened. Juharia then called Yudi, Asep's younger brother, and hysterically informed him that Asep had died in an accident. She claimed that Asep had fallen and hit his head on the cupboard after they had argued. When Yudi arrived and saw Asep's body, he noticed something strange because there were numerous bruises on Asep's head, face, and neck that looked like marks from pressure. Suspecting foul play, Yudi intended to report the incident to the police. However, Asep's father, believing Juharia's story, rejected Yudi's suggestion, considering it merely an accident and not wanting to escalate the issue. Asep was eventually buried in his hometown in Bekasi. Although it seemed like everything was over, Sylvia and her mother celebrated their success behind the scenes. Moreover, with the substantial money in their hands, they completely forgot that they had activated a ticking time bomb, the debt from the online loan applications. 10 days later, on July 8th, the due date for the loan, debt collectors from both applications began trying to contact Asep, the borrower. When they couldn't reach Asep, they started contacting his family, including Yudi, his younger brother. Yudi was shocked to learn about Asep's outstanding debt from the online loans. Moreover, according to the loan company, Asep had applied for a loan on June 27th, even though he had already passed away on that date. Noticing something suspicious, Yudi went to Asep's house, where Juharia was. He asked for Asep's bank statements to review. Juharia panicked and refused to provide them. She even became angry to protect Asep's bank statements from being seen by Yudi. This only heightened Yudi's suspicions. Logically, if there was nothing to hide, why would she go to such lengths to refuse? Eventually, after continuous pressure, Juharia relented and handed over Asep's bank statements. Yudi immediately checked the account transactions and found that on June 27th, there was a withdrawal of funds from 2 online loans, totaling 56.5 million rupias. Even more shocking, on the same day, all that money was transferred to an account under Sylvia's name, leaving Asep's account with only 53,000 rupias. Yudi became increasingly convinced that something was amiss regarding Asep's death. With the evidence in hand, Yudi invited his sister, Ade, to help investigate the matter independently. They then approached Sylvia with their usual demeanor, as if nothing had happened, to trap her lies. When they met, Yudi pretended to ask, "Sylvia, there were many orders earlier. I just sold my merchandise and there's an order. Do you know how much savings your father had?" Sylvia immediately responded, claiming that her father's balance was only 50,000 rupias, and she professed ignorance about the online loans. Yudi and Adi then presented Asep's bank statements, showing the withdrawals from the 2 online loans at 6 a.m., along with the evidence that all the money had been transferred to Sylvia's account. Sylvia panicked, especially when they asked her to show her current balance. She became increasingly anxious about revealing her true balance. As Sylvia's answers became more convoluted, Yudi and Ade finally requested that she confess to what had really happened. Eventually, Sylvia could no longer hold back and admitted her wrongdoing. This confession completely shocked Udi and Adi. They never expected that Sylvia, known as a good and quiet child, could do such a thing. After that, they immediately reported everything to the entire family. Sylvia and her mother were interrogated by the family, and eventually, Juhariah also confessed, admitting her mistake in committing the act. Udi and Ade promptly reported the case to the police and submitted all the evidence they had collected. The police began handling the case, and Sylvia and her mother were immediately detained for questioning and interrogation. During the investigation, they admitted that their actions were also assisted by Sylvia's boyfriend, Hagisko. With this confession, Hagisko was also arrested, and the case began to gain clarity. Meanwhile, the police conducted an exhumation of Asap's body to autopsy it and investigate the cause of death. After the autopsy results came out, several bruises were found on Asap's head, indicating that these injuries had led to his death, along with bruises on his eyes, lips, and neck, suggesting that he had been choked. After all the evidence was gathered, the three perpetrators were named suspects, facing severe penalties of either the death penalty or life imprisonment for committing such a premeditated act. However, this punishment had not yet been imposed, as the legal process was still ongoing, given that the case was relatively new.
Regardless of the outcome of the sentencing, what matters most is the lesson learned from this case. Hopefully, this case can serve as a lesson for all of us, so that similar incidents do not happen again in the future. The most frightening aspect of such cases is that the perpetrators are not distant figures, but rather those closest to us. Therefore, it is crucial for us to always build good relationships with everyone. That's all for this discussion. See you in the next case discussions.